Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be preparing my concrete basement floor for some self-leveling compound. And then I'll be topping everything off with a layer of pigmented micro cement. Make sure to check out part 1 if you want to see how I cleaned up after the flooding, removed the carpet, and ground down this surface. I'm using the Re-cap product by Quikcrete to fill in this void. What I'm trying to do with this screed board is get it flat relative to another reference surface, because this basement slopes in multiple directions. And my goal is to get it flat within 3/32 of an inch over 6 feet. That's the tolerance of the final floor finish that we're considering. At this point, I'm not trying to get this perfect, but I'm doing my best to smooth out any ridges or trowel marks and to feather the edges. This area had a lot of pits, and it's also got a slope toward the wall that kind of comes back to bite me in the end. I didn't fill it in deep enough, and you'll see that in the final finish a little bit. I did my best to fill holes and divots with the idea that the self-leveling concrete wouldn't fill up those voids, but rather contour to them. Alright, so you can see here this first area filled up and relatively flat and smooth. Alright, I'm getting the second 10-pound bag down, and it's always surprising to see how much you actually need to fill up a void. I thought this was a minor dip, but it really telegraphs through quite a lot of the floor. So I got 4 bags of self-leveling concrete, in addition to some of this vinyl concrete patching compound to get the small pits filled up. Prior to pouring the self-leveling compound down, it requires a primer, and they said that it should be brushed on with a broom. The first layer is watered down with water, and the second coat I rolled on full strength. That primer dries pretty fast, so I'm preparing my self-leveling compound. So I'm doing this all myself. So I defined the water amount that I was going to add to each bag, pre-filled buckets prior to mixing, and I prepared 2 of the 4 bags so that I could pour them one after the other and have them flow into each other. I did a lot of research and watched a lot of YouTube videos in preparation to pour. I think the most extensive and helpful catalog of materials on YouTube is Mr. You Can Do It Yourself. Despite all the research, there's no substitute for some trial and error, and I've come to some of my own conclusions about what I need to do differently next time. The first thing is pour it where you want it, and try not to with it. Despite it being liquidy, it's surprising how much it wants to stay in the same general area that it's poured, and it's difficult to break the surface tension. This method of screeding does work well, and I'm glad that I used that technique, but why not just move it up toward the wall when I poured it? Pushing it around like this keeps some of the marks. Like when I'm trying to break the surface tension by tapping, some of those tap marks remain in the solidified concrete. I'll show you in a minute the spike roller that helps break the surface tension a bit better. I also probably shorted myself by 2 bags. If I had a little bit more material, I wouldn't have had to spread it out so much and could have avoided some of the marks. In this overhead shot, you can see just how ugly the concrete surface is. But this is another example of where another bag of concrete would have been better, because I'm creating some patchiness by spreading it with the squeegee. You can see where I'm squeegeeing the top here, what's revealing what's just underneath. Some of those little spots are apparent in the final finish. So make sure not to be super stingy with your material. Alright, for my fourth and final bag, I reprimed, mixed it up with 5 liters of water, which is a little extra watery. I poured it in puddles. I used my screed board to get it flat against the other reference surfaces. And instead of using the squeegee, I ordered this $14 spiked roller to break the surface tension and get it to be evenly settled. I used a flexible stainless steel trowel to feather the edge. And I used a spray bottle on the mist setting to get the feathered edge really nicely blended into the other pores. Here's another look at the pour, and you can see how that sloping floor looks now. And I'm not trying to level the floor because I'd have to go up another inch. I'm just trying to get it to be relatively flat on a couple different planes. The product I decided to go with to top off the self-leveling concrete is a micro cement product from Quikcrete with a pigment. The pigment color I decided to go with is limestone. One of the things I think I did incorrectly was I didn't mist the substrate beforehand. The directions were a little hard to interpret. From what I understand, it's a self-priming product, but should be applied with a certain level of moisture on the floor. And I'm not sure what impact this will have on the surface, but there's nothing I can do about that now. The other thing I would have done was only worked up half of the bag. I needed to work so quickly that I was getting ahead of myself and leaving more trowel marks than I would have liked. And I think it would have been good to invest in a high quality squeegee on a pole. I'm putting these ribbons down as quickly as I can to get into the other edge, and then squeegeeing it in arcing patterns. I think this is satisfying to watch, but you might be wondering, is this fun to do? And it's not that fun. Mostly because you have to work so quickly. I didn't quite know if these spiked shoes would come in handy, and they actually did. They were only $14, and it saved a lot of work in the next step, which will be some wet sanding. What I'm thinking right now is, did I choose the right color? It's so very similar to the walls and has that green hue. I'm really curious to see how it's going to dry. And the next day it had dried, and you can see that it's quite a bit lighter with a lot of modeling and texture on the floor. And I think it looks really nice. In some ways I felt like I liked the flatness that I had achieved with the self-leveling concrete. This is more of an old world look. Practically I wanted to get some of the trowel marks and ridges down. So I decided that I'd use something that I already had in the garage, which is a multi-sided diamond sharpening block, and I wet sanded, which was much more comfortable compared to sanding with a grinder or a dry sanding disc, keeping the dust down. So I decided just to do the whole thing by hand. It did leave quite a bit of a haze from the muddy residue, but after doing several passes with a sponge and microfiber cloths, I got the residue up. And I think it looks really nice. The last step in this process will be to do a cure and seal finish top coat. And our plan will be to keep the wall open and observe if we get any water infiltration. If the waterproofing repair seems stable, we're considering tile, true linoleum plank, or maybe even leaving it like this and getting a large area rug. What do you think the best finished surface will be? I hope you picked up some tips along the way. Let me know if you want to see a third video where I do the final finishing steps, like putting the drywall back and putting the base trim back on. I'd very much appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel to see what's coming up next. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.